different office. Um, I, I, it's not gave because it wasn't mine to give. I relinquished, if you will, where I was to Rabbi Fine, one of our new rabbis. Have you met Rabbi Fine? She is so smart. She's so smart. So smart.
I think I saw her when she was a guest
Yes,
lecturer.
possibly. So I wanted her to have that office because it's in the middle of everything. You know, it's good for her to meet new people and to be in the action. Here, we're kind of put away upstairs, but that's okay. I've got the kids over here, and you know, I think it's better for her to be there than for her to be here. Anyway, you didn't come here for that kind of chit chat. I know. Let's just jump right in over here and do a little got some interesting things to talk about. But let's start with a little blessing. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu v'tzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah. Let us get busy with Torah. Let us soak ourselves in Torah. Amen. Amen. All right. Tavo. We're getting towards the end of our portion of our Torah, right? We're going to Tavo. When you come in where? God's talking to people. When you come into the land, like we're there, like basically on the edge, getting ready to go in, and Moses is kind of freaking out. Moses is going. Let's pop this bad boy right here. Moses is kind of, way to go. That's not what I wanted to show you. Where is it? No. Let's see. No, not this one. God says the meeting. You don't want that one. Boom. No. What do you guys see? Let me stop it here. Let's try it again. What did you see?
A small print. Was it 27? Was it
Small print of what?
The letter.
What did you see?
Excuse me, Rebecca. The letter of
Here we go.
Levites. The letter of Levites.
That is not what I want to.
14 through 26.
Do you see what do you see right now?
The Levites shall then proclaim in a loud voice.
You see what I want you to see. Fabulous, fantastic,
Okay.
Wonderful. Do y'all need me to make it bigger? Pow! All right. So here's what's happening. Right? Here's what's happening right now. They're on the edge. And Moses knows that he's not going in with them. And he's kind of freaking out about it. So he's like trying to give the last bit of advice before he leaves them. Right? He's trying to give them the last bit of advice before he leaves them. But okay. All right, we'll get to this other question that I have, but let's go to this one first. This is interesting. Because are any of you or know anything about farming? Oh, Ben, you know stuff about farming? Okay, good. So hold on. I'm going to ask you some questions. I'll put you on the spot a little bit just to kind of help us with some perspective here. But first, I want to read this section. When you enter the land that your God is giving you as a heritage and you possess it. Oh, Brad. Pop on in, Brad. Yes, Brad is here. Fabulous, Brad. You can hear us. Good to hear you. Good to see your name anyway. You shall take okay, here it is. You shall take some of every first fruit of the soil, which you harvest from the land that your God Adonai is giving you. Put it in a basket and go to the place where your God Adonai will choose to establish the divine name. You shall go to the priest in charge at that time and say to him, I acknowledge this day before your God Adonai that I have entered the land that Adonai swore to our fathers to assign us. The priest shall take the basket from your hand and set it down in front of the altar to your God. Similarly, before I get to my question, Wherefore I now bring the first fruits of the soil which you, Adonai, have given me. You shall leave it before your God and bow low before your God. And you shall enjoy together with the family of the Levite and the stranger in your midst all the bounty that your God Adonai has bestowed upon you and your household. When you have set aside in full the 10th part of your yield, well, the rain's coming. Third year, the year of the tithe, you have given to the family of the Levite, the stranger, the fatherless, the widow, and then they eat their fill from their settlements. Okay, let me ask you something here. Why are you required to give first fruits? Required to give the first fruits? We'll start with that question. Why are we required to give our first fruits? Why are we required? What do we got?
Got my
Go
hand
ahead,
up.
Ben. Go ahead, Ben.
Well, Rabbi, thank you. I'm thinking first fruit to me could mean either sort of the first blossom of flowerings, but also the best of the product. The first.
Why are you? That's
I'm
what
a rebel.
okay.
I'm a rebel. So
That's
why?
my
I mean, it's the
question,
best.
though. Okay, go.
I mean, the best, but
But
they took it to the altar. But did they eat it as well with the priests and Levi?
The
I mean, that sounds like a
Levites.
pretty good, bountiful, joyful, your best. I mean, that sounds like a pretty good happening.
That's my question. Is the first fruits the best?
Could be.
The first fruits is that always like where they say
It's
with
gonna
blueberry
be good.
bushes.
Your first
The
flower,
first blueberries
the
that come
first
from the
blossom.
blueberry bush are always sour. The first blackberries are always so sour. We have to wait until you get them, and then you start getting the sweetness. Hey, I'm just gonna give you the so. It could be. I got you, Roy. I see you, Ben. The first fruits can be the best. I didn't think so, but maybe I'm wrong. That's why I asked: who's into farming?
I would say farming is a bit of a stretch. I'm into horticulture and growing and things like that.
Okay, that's yes.
Okay, I'm gonna pass now to Roy, please.
No pass. Okay, Roy.
Well, I think there's a little more complexity in that it's not taking the best, but it's also not being the first recipient of it. It makes you think of not yourself, but others.
Okay. Yes. I love that. So it's about it's not, you're like the person that you're not even number two. First you're thanking God, then you're hooking up the Levites, then you're hooking up, right, the widow and the orphan and everything, right? It's only but you get to share it with them. There are so many different things happening here, right? There's so many different things happening here. One, it's about gratitude. It's not always about you. Always about you. And third, about just giving people theoretically. Actually what? Said it. I'm not just dropping it off and leaving. What am I doing with it? Ellen, were you speaking or are you? What are you doing with it? You're not just dropping it off. What are you doing? Talking. Unmute
It is a
yourself, dude.
recognition, right? It is a recognition when it's presented to the in the temple. Or
Who is speaking? Who's speaking?
this is Joselito Garcia.
Oh, Joselito! I didn't even know. I was like, who's that? Because I can't see your. I don't see your picture. They're like, good. Thank you, Joselito. So say that again.
I was saying that it's a recognition to God, because it's presented to Elohim, So
And
it's a recognition of word and a recognition of God for his promise.
then, but you're not just dropping it off, right? You're not just dropping it off. You shall leave it before Adonai your God, bow low before God, and you shall unmute yourself, dude.
Eat it up too. Enjoy it too.
Yes, together.
Eat it.
Share it with them. Enjoy it with, right? So the purpose, let's go a little bit deeper of like the purpose of enjoying it, right? And sharing it with the Levite. And oh, Doug's here. With the Levite and the stranger and the fatherless and the widow, right? And the orphan. What is the point of sharing it with these specific people? What's the purpose of that?
May I share, since I'm a widow?
Yeah, go, Jonah.
I'm a widow, and I
Got
just
a
love
haircut.
I'm sadly a widow for a long time, but I just want to say the temple has given me such love, and this is the example of giving. In so many ways, there's ways to give, and I'm appreciative of all that. I go to the Karsh pantry every week. I just want to say that we are, because God, Adonai wants us to show, and not just word, or like look righteous in public, but to even secretly give is even better. To not put your name out there. I did this, I did that, But to do it in secret is even better, because then you're just like, it's not about you, it's about you're just doing obeying the Adonai's commandment.
All right, so which is interesting then, like maybe it's like I'm sharing this food, but we're not saying that it came from me. I could be being like, yeah, I don't even know where this came from. It's fabulous, right? But really it came from you. But
Exactly, yeah.
what else does it do by actually being with people like that? Doug looking good. You get a haircut, fabulous.
Are you asking me or are you asking somebody else?
I'm asking everybody.
What does it do?
Yes,
It
what does it
brings
do?
healing to many people and to the giver.
Okay, but let's get even more specific, right? What it can do is humanize, right? Humanize these quote unquote categories, right? Humanize. It's not like what a rabbi leader said is like really, really interesting when he talks about numbers of people. Right? When you say like there's 1,000 people, no, there is one person 1,000 times.
Oh, yeah.
Right? It's a person 1,000 times, right?
Okay.
1,000 times.
I don't want to interrupt anymore. No, you're right, but could you put your email in the chat? Because I probably have something I want to share with you privately. Could you put your email in the chat?
Well, you can. I'm on the website. Hook me
Okay,
up,
no problem. Okay.
Mm-hmm,
All right.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, so it's like you're humanizing the people. So when you're doing that, right, it kind of like, I'm not going to say levels the playing field, because that is not a reality, but it does help us think, to become maybe perhaps more empathetic, more open to understanding, to choices we make, all those kind of interesting things. Like yesterday was open house. Yeah, Roy, I got you. There was an open house at my. Oh, Doug, what's going on over here? You got to unmute and say hello.
Sorry. I'm his wife, Elaine. Hello. I kind of listen in the background. So I think it puts people on a level playing field when you don't take credit for your donations or whatever. It takes away that strata of people, because you're just like the ones you're donating to if you're sharing the meal together or whatever it is that you've done to help them. You're not making yourself more special. Right? Pardon?
Yeah. It also it lifts everybody up, right? With dignity.
Exactly. Right. And it keeps you humble because you're not trying to get a pat on the back. You know, if I'm giving to someone and I want a pat on the back, is that helping me or is that helping the other people?
Wrong motivation.
You know, what's my motivation? Is it for me to feel better or for help them?
And,
That's
you
what
know,
I
I think that's what Donor was getting, like the highest level of tzedakah is, right?
Right. It was
Giving
my
anonymous.
Maimonides, right?
Right.
Yeah, exactly. Doug, how come Elaine doesn't show up more often?
Because he needs his time and I need my time.
All right, hey, that's the to the successful marriage. That's the answer to okay. So yesterday I was at my daughter's open house at the school, and she's taking AP psychology, and the professor, he actually is a professor in her high school, was saying the point of, like, for him, social psychology is not about, you know, for the kids, it's learning not necessarily how to manipulate or how to understand people, but rather to create, I guess it is to understand, but also to create empathy, right? To create empathy. What, man, how'd you do that? That's pretty cool. To create this empathy, right? And so when you're doing this, when you're actually sharing a meal with somebody, and it's where everyone in the group isn't like boasting about who they are or who they're not, right? It creates this level playing field, like Elaine was sharing, and also creates this this sense of empathy. Good. All right, we're gonna move on. Donna, you still have a question, or are you Roy? Oh, Roy did. My bad. Go, Roy.
Well, one other thought is that most of these people are the most vulnerable. And the point is to make sure that the most vulnerable in society are also not left behind or not neglected. And I think of a Torah portion, you know, back, you know, I don't know, maybe 3 months ago that Rabbi David was leading, and there was some incident where people are, the Israelites are going to be attacked, but there were sort of stragglers. And my point was, you know, is that you can't leave your stragglers behind. You got to keep
Right.
everyone into the fold. And
Right.
I think in some ways that's what this is touching on too.
Fabulous. But well, then why the Levites? Are they
I missed the
vulnerable?
question.
Why the Levites?
Well, I said it's not all. They're not all. The Levites aren't vulnerable. They're part of the rabbinate, aren't? Or the
Oh,
leaders.
good. Okay, because yet they don't have any land. They have
Right.
like they don't have any land, so it's like they need to eat too, right? They need to eat too. Good. All right, we're gonna keep going. All right, this is also very interesting here. Make sure we're good. Your God Adonai commands you this day to observe these laws and rules. Observe them faithfully with all your heart and your soul. You have affirmed this day that Adonai is your God, in whose ways you will walk, whose laws and commandments and rules you will observe, and whom you will obey. Adonai has affirmed this day that you are, as promised, God's treasured people who shall observe all the divine commandments. Now, how does one command someone to observe one's heart and soul? Right? This harkens back to the Ve'ahavta, right? You will love Adonai, your God, with all your heart, your might, and your soul. How does one command someone to act with all of their heart and their soul? Right? Because we could both do the same action, but you might be doing it with all your heart and your soul. I may not be, but it looks exactly the same. Does my of the commandment hit any less than yours if you're doing it with your heart and your soul? But mine, I'm still, the outcome is still exactly the same. So which is there a difference here? Am I not fulfilling the commandment if I'm not putting my whole heart and soul into it, though my result is going to be exactly the same as yours? Thoughts? Burns raising his hand. Oh, Roy, he beat you to the buzzer. And then Roy.
Is Brad doing okay, Rabbi? He was gonna do a. Oh, Brad doing all right.
I was thinking of something that Doug Emhoff, the first gentleman, said yesterday, that one cannot command your stepchildren to love a step parent, but it's a love that is sort of earned and created and happens over time based on actions and things. This sort of, I don't know, how can you command somebody to love, or how can you command somebody to use all your heart and soul? So I'm kind of, I don't know, you can hope that they do with good intent, but you can't command them to love somebody.
Roy.
I'm wrestling with the commands aspect. So Doug or Ben did a better job of that. But the way I read heart and soul is you have to observe them faithfully with emotionally as well as intellectually. And so you can comprehend it. And I guess commands would be as much, it's going to be a more effective way of getting to people doing that than just saying, I suggest, or I wish, or, it's sometimes you gotta be a leader and direct people what to do.
Okay, but what if, like, I fed somebody, I clothed the naked and I fed the hungry, but I did it begrudgingly and I was a curmudgeon about it. But you did it. You were like, yes, and you fed them and you clothed them and you did it with your heart and your soul. But the result is exactly the same. Was the commandment any less followed? Doug, and then Rebecca. Oh, sorry, Rebecca, then Doug.
I just have a question, because there's two words that are repeated 3 times. God commands you this day. You have affirmed this day. And at the bottom, again, Adonai has affirmed this day. What is this day? Does this day mean September 20th? What is this day?
Oh, you know what? That's so interesting.
Is it this day or all days you're supposed to reaffirm?
So that's a great question. I'm going to say, yes and yes. At first, I was going to say, oh, it's this day because he's like, today, I'm talking to you today. You listening, you listen. But Rebecca, I love your interpretation, though, because it can also be this day, meaning every day, right? Yesterday is there's no yesterday. This day is the only thing we have. Tomorrow is not promised, right? The only thing is promised is right now, at this moment, this day.
Well,
I like
good.
that, Rebecca. I'm totally stealing that. I'm going to use it. I'll give you credit, but
no, good. Thank you.
I like that, Rebecca. I like it. Thank you. Go, Doug.
In answer to your question, they would both be the same, whether you gave out of the generosity and love of your heart, or just because you did it.
Yep.
It's another level of Maimonides. I mean, it's still on the chart.
It's still on. It's still on the chart. It's still on the chart. So I fulfilled it, and it was like good for them. But it's like, okay, you did C-level work. You passed. You passed. But maybe you could have done other things as well with your intention. That's interesting. Okay, I got that.
Okay.
Rabbi, I had a thought.
Oh, Brad.
One other. Can I get one other?
Thought, Doug, and then Brad's up.
Yesterday, I was sending a birthday greeting to my grandson, who is living with his girlfriend, who we've met, once a couple of years ago. And I ended it with love. I love you. I love you. And then I thought, well, I should put I love you both. And then I thought, well, no, because I really don't love her. I don't even know her that well yet. And to me, after struggling, trying to figure out what the hell love is, love to me is an action verb. If you love somebody, you do stuff for them. And if you don't get stuff done for you, then they don't really love you. So it's, you know, you got to take an action to love. That's it.
Whoa, you getting into some stuff right there, right? The different. Oof. I'm not even gonna approach it because it's so delicious right now. But we're gonna go to Brad.
Yeah. Well, first of all, Donna, thanks for your concern. And the thought that occurs to me, are you familiar with Marcel Mauss and his theory of gift giving?
No, share, please.
Okay, he's a philosopher who studied gifts, particularly in the ancient world. And when you give a gift, you enter into an exchange. I give you a gift, you feel obligated to return the gift to me, and we enter into this relationship of mutual gift giving.
What do you
Well,
mean? What do you explain? What do you mean? I give the gift back to you.
You feel, when I give you a gift, you feel obligated to give me back something. And when you give me back something, I'm obligated then to give you something. So what my point is that unless you enter into this type of relationship with a full heart, it's not going to last. And that's the difference between somebody who enters it perfunctorily and somebody who's serious about it, is the longevity of the relationship. And the whole point of the relationship is to arrive at some level of peace between the parties. Okay. So it's that's why the sincerity is important. It has to do with the longevity of the relationship.
That's so interesting. So okay, this is beautiful. Let me share something with you wow, okay. So I was just meeting with a wedding couple, and when my first meeting with the wedding couple, we're going over like their story, and I'm asking all the questions, like how they met it, and then I asked, like, who said I love you first, right? I said, who said I love you first? So in this couple, so it's a heterosexual couple. The woman said I love you first. But he didn't respond, I love you back at that same time. And at first she was really hurt, right? She didn't like say, oh, yeah, but it was like, oh, I was expecting. And he said, look, I felt it, but I had to make sure, because when I really use that word, when I actually say it, I want it to be true and full and really that I understand it. And from my heart, it's not the obligation of having to say it, right? Like, you gave me this gift, I feel this obligation, I have to give this gift back to you. So that's fascinating, what you just said there. So it's almost as if, right, this marriage it's the same thing, the marriage between God and the Jewish people. Great. Brad, thank you for that. I love that. That's fantastic. Okay, we had two people who let me see who's raising their hand here. Where'd it go? No, we've got three people raising their hand. Let me see. Joselito, you're up first, and then who else is raising their hand? Oh, I got it right here. Jonathan, before we go, Joselito, Jonathan, Donna.
Yeah. Going back to these with all my heart, right? It's a process. It's very difficult. I think that we need to clean our heart from our current condition. But you mentioned a word before that is empathy. And with that empathy, I think that it's a start, right? Because it's a process that I identify with the other person. I put myself there. And it's a process that I start cleaning my heart and put my heart in that situation without expectation, because when you give with your heart, you don't expect nothing back. You know, if we expect something back, I think that something wrong there. It's not pure heart. Uh, it's the intention need to be more clean in my belief, in my understanding.
Wow, that's also super Jewish, right? I mean, it's like the cutting away. It's very high holidays. Oslito, that's very high holidays right there. The cutting away of the thickness of our hearts, right? It's like they said, like circumcising your heart, the cutting away of the thickness of your heart in order for it to truly be empathetic, right? Cutting away the scar tissue and that kind of stuff. Beautifully said. Thank you very much, Jonathan.
Okay, so first of all, I'm in Florida resting with Dad, and I've had Malcolm McDowell's tipping point on the mind, which is like, there's a point where you should shut up. And so I'm not really, I don't have big freaking orations for anybody, but when it came to the idea of love and this bargain thing that Brad, or the exchange, in the scripture, there's chesed and there's ahava. And chesed is that's the right hand, the mother of the right hand column of the Kabbalah tree of life, and it's also Hasidism, the word for a Hasid, and my understanding of it is that it sort of means like this immutable, unpredicated, unmoving, unwaverable dedication to the other that expects nothing back. Now, I don't know about ahava. I don't really know that. I know that more like from modern Hebrew. It's like I love ice cream, So I don't know. And then anyway, I'm again tipping point. Shut up. But anyway, I just kind of wanted to talk about that. There's this idea of love that is empathic and interplay and all, and but there's also this kind of like, and it's really associated with God. It's just there for you, and it doesn't depend on you at all. It doesn't it doesn't change. It doesn't relate to what you're doing or anything like that. That's all I got to say, and I'll make sure I don't go over my tipping point now.
Appreciate you, John. Appreciate you, Donna. Go.
Thank you, Jonathan, for that input. I don't want to say a lot either. I'm learning, but I do know one thing. I will say, when it comes to romantic love, money's got nothing. Wait, the Torah. Let me say about being in love.
No, say it.
Proverbs 31, a virtuous woman, virtuous wife, like Ruth. Love's got nothing to do with money. Period. And so my sweetheart, I don't talk about it. We just talk about love. But giving, you're like you said, the key is the intention at hand, and to not put your name out there and do it anonymously is my take on what the right kind of giving is. Thank you. That's all I got. Shabbat shalom.
It's fascinating. Jonathan, do you prefer Jonathan or John?
Jonathan. They're different names.
Correct. Okay. Jonathan. It made me think of something. I'll giving you a little preview, something that I'm writing about for Yom Kippur, the difference between this idea of love, ahava, and knowing, yediyah, not knowing as in like, I know the answer to something, but to truly know someone, right? And about our education system and the teaching of Israel, namely the relationship of developing a relationship with the state of Israel. And for years and years, right? At least as long as I've been going to school, even as a kid, there was a concept of wanting to teach Ahavat Israel, right? The love of Israel, right? By teaching the love of Israel, that's going to instill the connection, and that's going to strengthen the connection. What is now moving in a expanding the understanding, right? The notion that Ahavat Yisrael, love of Israel, is actually the second step to what the first step, what is really going to develop and solidify a foundational relationship, is something called Yediat Yisrael, to know Israel, like intimately, right? To know somebody intimately, you take them for everything that they are, for all their fabulousness and their faults, right? It's not just about, there's a term called blue washing. Have you heard this term before? Blue washing. They say, "Oh, you're only going to teach about Israel, about the falafel and the text message, and you're going to teach about all that's it," as opposed to teaching about Israel as a whole entity, right? An entire place. It's like the professor that I learned this from. Fascinating. She gave this example. She said, like, okay, if you're a Jewish educator, you come in, you walk into the middle of your class, the middle of your class, and you hear students arguing and asking really good questions, and then they're coming to you and asking you questions, and you're helping them figure it out. But then they come in, they're arguing again, and they're asking you questions that you don't even know the answer to. You're like, oh my God, I have no idea. Let's go research it. You would look at that class as a success. That's a successful Jewish studies class. However, if you put the same rubric, right, or the same standard, I was teaching a class about Israel, it was an Israel education class, and I walk into my classroom and everybody's arguing about stuff, and they're asking questions that I'm trying to answer, and then they start asking me questions that I don't know the answer to. It is deemed a generalization, but it has been deemed in that process as a failure. The exact same thing that you're looking at as success or failure, the exact same thing. Then when you look about it, it needs to be intimately connected, that you can't have Jewish education, Israel education. They are so intimately intertwined, right? So if you look at what success is, right? If you re-examine what success is, and success is questions, is struggle, is let's ask and figure and really dive. That's knowing, that's Yediat Yisrael. And from the knowing can come the love, right? The unadulterated love, like who spoke about that? Oh, sort of like what Brad said. The love is the real love, and it comes from that struggle and cutting away in the heart. Why did I start talking about that? Oh no, because Jonathan was talking about the chesed and ahava. That's why I was talking about the good. So I'm talking about that. This Yom Kippur, also in regard to some of the challenges that you hear from college students, where regardless if it's true or not, because I don't actually believe it's totally true. I'll give you an example where they say, you never told me, right? All you did was try and teach me about camels and falafel, and you never told me anything, right? They say, you just tried to make me love it without really knowing it. And because of that, I feel betrayed, right? It's a very common thing that you hear among many college-aged students. Regardless if it's true or not, they believe that to be true, that's what their education was, regardless if it was true or not. They're just hearing the noise over and over and over again. This is what happened to you. This is what happened to you. This is what happened to you. Now, why do I say it's not necessarily that it's happened, right, in all cases, though they keep saying it. I had a student, I have a student who, when they were with me at camp, when they were 15 years old, 14 years old, right? Now they're in college, and the person wrote a scathing post about me and about camp and about the education that we were giving this person. So I contacted the person, right? The conversation was like, wow, that was really good. Yeah, Rabbi Eshel, you did tell me. I said, okay. Let's take a look at the lesson plans that I created for the time when you were really there, when you were actually there. We pulled it up, we put it on the Zoom, I shared the screen, and it was very much about the complexities about what society looks like, who makes it up, what are the challenges, is there really equality, what does it look like, and it blew this person's mind. It's like, oh, you did try and teach it. So I was like, really, I failed, right? I didn't get it across in such a way. Maybe it's also, you're a 15, 14-year-old kid who had other interests when you were at camp, namely relationships and all that kind of stuff. And I was putting you to sleep. Very possible. Or there, because if this is what these students are believing, then that is their truth. If we focus from the beginning, even as little kids, on Yediyat, that's where I believe Ahava will beautifully blossom and can be nurtured. That's my Yom Kippur soapbox for right now. You can tune in. I'll be at the Resnick campus with that one on Yom Kippur Day. All right, any other comments about this before we keep going?
You're a treasure.
That, but we are all treasures.
Yes, we all are, but you're a treasure. I just want to tell you.
What does it right here? We ended in the thing, and Adonai has affirmed this day that you are, as promised, God's treasured people. Okay, here we go. Good. All right, we're moving on.
I didn't even know that was in there, Rabbi.
All right, so this is also interesting. Moses and the elders of Israel charged the people, saying, observe all the instructions that I enjoined upon you this day. As soon as you have crossed into the Jordan, into the land that your God Adonai is giving you, you shall set up large stones, coat them with plaster, and inscribe upon them all the words of this teaching. When you cross over to enter the land that your God Adonai is giving you, a land flowing with milk and honey, as Adonai, the God of your ancestors, promised you, upon crossing the Jordan, you shall set up these stones about which I charge you this day on Mount Ebal, and coat them with plaster. It's sort of like these, it's going to be these little stones, right? If it's all of these laws, it's basically saying, write the entire Torah on these big stones and put them up. All can see, right? But then it says, the Levites shall then proclaim in a loud voice to all the people of Israel, cursed be any party who makes a sculptured or molten image abhorrent to God. A craftsman's handiwork is set up in secret, and all the people shall respond, Amen. You get rid of everything else. What does it say? We talked about this last time I was on board with all y'all, that the first thing they're supposed to do is go in and destroy all the altars of the people who are already there. Get rid of all of them, and then just make your own stuff right where those were. Why? Not so much because of God's feeling towards the others, but God's feeling towards being like, we won't be able to control ourselves. Wipe out everything and just put up our own thing so we can only focus on that. Right? So this is one of those things. It's like these big, big, big walls on the stone. Now, it was interesting. It was, when I read this, what came to mind was visiting the Lincoln Memorial, right, in Washington, D.C. And you have Lincoln's speech up on the walls right there, talking about our country and all. It's like in the stone and in the plaster, and and all those things. And it's very violent, right? It's very, very violent. The reconciliation between us in our own country. And I wonder, right? So the story is going to be violent that we're putting up here, replacing that which was already there, right? That, what can be, let me ask you this, what can the unintended negative consequence of something like that be? What could be the unintended negative consequence of something like that? Think about that. Are we frozen? Did the Zoom freeze? I'm frozen. I can't answer the question. I'm frozen. Can't answer the question. So what do I mean by that? It is almost like the same thing as saying this term, the blue washing, right? That God isn't necessarily trusting us to not necessarily trusting us to, what's the word I'm looking for? To observe faithfully who we are, embrace who we are, internalize who we are, when you have these other things there as well, right? Giving into temptation, right? Giving into temptation, because we keep talking about that and keep talking about that and keep talking about that. But what happens when they go in? This is all outside. This is all theoretical. Where you have the mixing and you have the, right? So it's almost as if that fear is actualized unintentionally, right? I don't know. This is, I can't help but think that that there are a lot of similarities here for me. Anyway, all right, we're gonna keep going. We're gonna keep going. I'm skipping over all this one. This is it. I want to get to. Now, if you obey your God, Adonai, to observe faithfully all the divine commandments which I join upon you this day, your God Adonai will set you high above all the nations of the earth. All these blessings shall come upon you and take effect if you will but heed the word of your God. But if you do not obey your God to observe faithfully all the commandments and the laws which I enjoin upon you this day, all these curses shall come upon you and take effect. Moses summoned all Israel and said to them, you have seen all that Adonai did before your very eyes in the land of Egypt to Pharaoh and to all his courtiers and to his whole country, the wondrous feats that you saw with your own eyes, those prodigious signs and marvels. Yet to this day, Adonai has not given you a mind to understand or eyes to see or ears to hear. I led you through the wilderness before you 40 years. The clothes on your back did not wear out, nor did the sandals on your feet. Okay, let's go back. We've talked about this multiple times before, this idea of blessings and curses, blessings and curses. If you act this way, you shall be blessed. If you act this way, you're going to be cursed. We've discussed this concept of like positive reinforcement versus negative reinforcement. And that a few years ago, I wrote a sermon about this, about the words that we use, the language that we use. It could mean the same thing, but the way people respond to it is going to be very different. For example, when you're at a public pool and the kids are running around, instead of saying, don't run, say, walk, please, right? That they're going to respond differently to you than saying, don't run. Then the research about smokers and people who have quit smoking and the percentage of people who have relapsed, that the percentage is much higher for people who have relapsed of smoking, who have said, I'm going to quit smoking because I don't want to die, relapsed more than the people who went in with the language of, I want to quit smoking because I want to live. That the positive language, right? The number of those who went back to smoking, the percentage is very low. Or like if you're a golfer and you say, don't hit it in the sand versus hit it on the green, right? You're meaning the same thing, but your mind is going to look at it differently. However, then I was like, how many of you or how many of us here, right? Don't touch the stove, burn yourself, it's gonna hurt. You're gonna remember that. Versus don't touch the stove. If you don't touch the stove, I'll give you an ice cream. If you listen to what I say, I'll give you ice cream. That's like a positive reinforcement, a negative reinforcement. I'm not sure, but definitely, look, I am inclined to remember when I touched that stove and burning myself, like still having the scar. Like I remember that, but like I read this, it's so funny. But I don't remember my first ice cream. Right? I don't remember my first ice cream. So almost negative reinforcement has its value, right? Has its value. So it's almost like you got to really think about, you're going to have this type of reinforcement. You need both, right? It's not all or nothing, because some people are going to respond one way, some people are going to respond other ways, right? Some people are going to respond some ways, other people are going to respond other ways. So that's why I think there's the need for the blessings and the curses, because we're all different types of learners. We're all going to respond differently. But then it's so interesting. This is the last line, right? This last line where it says, Moses summoned all Israel and said to them, you have seen all that Adonai did before your very eyes in the land of Egypt, which is also not true. Everybody else is, the only people who saw it was Caleb and Joshua who are left. Everybody who saw the wonders, they're all dead. They're all gone from all the wandering. But the glorious feats that you saw with your own eyes and those prodigious signs, yet to this day, so let's talk about this. Yet to this day, God has not given you a mind to understand or eyes to see or ears to hear. I led you through the wilderness for 40 years, yet the clothes on your back did not wear out, nor did the sandals on your feet. What is going on there? What does it mean? God's wanting us to listen to these things and to proclaim our love and to observe faithfully, be careful with the blessings and curses, yet all the way up until this point, yet to this day, God has not given you a mind to understand or eyes to see or ears to hear. Right? What does that mean? What's going on here with that line? Based on everything that we even talked about here today. The first fruits, the understanding that it's not just about you, the understanding that you didn't create it out of the ground, God created it out of the ground. You need to share this with these people. There are going to be people among you who are needy and who are poor and who are the orphan and who are, right? Yet how are we supposed to understand that? We can't even understand how come the shirt on our backs, right? The clothes on our didn't wear out and our sandals on our feet didn't wear out. We don't have the minds to understand or the eyes to see or the ears to hear. What's going on with that line? But you're thinking, are your eyes up in the air because you're thinking? Is that a thinking face?
Rabbi, yes, I had a higher power that entered my office. And I had to provide total focus. Like God commands us here about listening to the commandments and disobeying. So I had to address that higher power that came into my office.
Appreciate you. So what is going on here with this line? This line really threw me for a loop. Yet to this day, God has not given you a mind to understand or eyes to see or ears to hear. It's almost like we're back in the Garden of Eden before we eat from the tree of knowledge.
But haven't we talked about that before, way back in the beginning, where the slaves, their paradigm, their reference was that having been slaves for years and years and generations. So this idea of freedom wasn't even, they couldn't even get it in their mind. So here God is saying, you couldn't appreciate these things because you had no baseline of appreciating the wonders that I'm providing you. God is saying, and maybe he's kind of dumbing it down. If you follow it, it's going to be good. If not, the carrot and the stick, you'll get the stick if you don't follow it. But trust me, it's going to be good for you to follow.
But so it's really like theoretical, because they don't understand what's going on, because they weren't the ones who experienced the hardship. They're not the ones who experienced it. It's like the self-made person who comes from nothing and becomes very, very wealthy in business and all that kind of, and then hands over the business to their child who grew up without wanting for anything, but doesn't have that drive that this child doesn't necessarily understand until they work from the ground up. I don't know. This is interesting. Was I understanding you correctly, Ben? That it's like God is not saying all these things, but these people have no idea about it, no concept.
So take it, Israelites, on faith, but know that if you don't follow it, there will be some consequences, but it's going to be for your own good, because when you get to this promised land, you're going to have this great life. I've blessed you as the chosen people, and trust me. But if you don't follow, you're gonna learn.
Well, this line definitely is flummoxed, befuddled. Takes a little bit more time to wrestle with. Anyway, Rebecca, you got the last word.
Well, I think it means to not intellectualize the covenant. It's not something to be intellectualized. It's not something to have a thought process about. It's something that has to organically happen.
Wow. How are we supposed to end on that? I mean, I don't even understand what that means. It's so good. Oy, Rebecca. I called on you. Just kidding. Of course I should have called on you. That was fabulous. When we start to analyze, it's almost like we're separated from it. I mean, that's very right, like I thou, boober, I it, I thou stuff right there. Whoa. I don't even know what to say, but I love that. All right, with that,
Shabbat
to everybody. And I think actually I see everybody again before Rosh Hashanah, so I can still say Shana Tova, even though I'll see you again before Rosh Hashanah, all that kind of good stuff. And don't give away my stuff about my Yom Kippur sermon. Don't tell anybody. I need to be fresh for them.
I'm going to send you an
everybody.
email. God bless you, everybody. Shabbat shalom. Happy holiday.
Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom.
Bye.
Have a great weekend. Be safe. Bye.
Your finger there. So good to see your finger. To see you there too.